I always do like a little introduction for people that might not have watched it, but obviously I'm Zoe and I've got Limb Girdle Muscular Dystrophy 1B, and I did this podcast because I'm 26 now and it's been quite a long journey of like acceptance of being quite unwell and stuff. And when I was younger, I just had no idea what life was going to be like, and I felt very alone and unsure. And I thought, well, if I could do a bit of a podcast and help educate people, including like parents and families that, are new on this journey, it might help even one person kind of know, like, oh, she can do that, I can do that. So that was really my inspiration for the podcast and a little bit about me. But what do you want to introduce yourself?
Wow, oh, that's so lovely and quite similar to me actually. So I have limb girdle muscular dystrophy 2I, or more recently known as R9.
Oh.
Yeah, I was diagnosed at 7, and it was kind of an accident the way I was diagnosed, because I was going through a diagnosis for celiac disease because I had that from birth, but just didn't get a diagnosis. And in the middle of all the blood tests and everything, they found that my CK levels were really, really high. And they were, obviously, the doctors were really worried because usually with high CK levels, it's usually, if you've got like really bad muscle or liver like failure or damage. So they were like really worried, and then they obviously knew that something was wrong and looked into that kind of path and looked into my muscles. They thought I had some kind of liver disease at the beginning, and I had a couple of biopsies and that was all clear. And then that led them to the LGMD diagnosis. So I was diagnosed at 7, and they told my parents, but my parents didn't tell me, just because I wasn't symptomatic then. So they just didn't want me to worry. I was doing absolutely fine at 7 years old. They just didn't want me to worry. But also I was a bit of a hypochondriac when I was younger. So I'm sure if they told me that I had something wrong with my muscles, I would have looked for signs. I would have, faked some injuries or something to get out of school. So it's probably for the best that they did that. And then I started to get symptoms at 12. So from my diagnosis at 7, I would always go to Great Ormond Street Hospital in London for just annual checkups and physio appointments. And I didn't really know, what it was. I just kind of thought, well, every time I go, they always say I'm doing absolutely fine. So there's clearly nothing to worry about. It must just be like a thing that all kids do. Yeah. So I never really kind of thought, about it in any other way other than that. Like, oh, I've just got to go to London every like once a year or whatever. And we always made a big trip out of it, so I actually look forward to going to London. We'd go and see the London Eye or whatever. This was great. Yeah, literally. But then so towards the end of primary school, I noticed that I was really slow and I couldn't really keep up with other people. So sports days were the worst. I'm sure you could relate. So I was always last. Yeah.
They used to like make me stay kind of just on the side, and I remember the first one they made me do, and God, they made me do everything and I couldn't do it. Like, literally was dragging myself up the steps trying to jump off. Oh God, it was awful. And then the year after, they just made this own little thing for me to do where I just threw a tennis ball into like a little bucket, and that was it.
No way.
Oh yeah.
Oh no. See, I think definitely maybe when we were in school there was a huge gap in just education about disabilities in young like kids. Because when I went into high school I couldn't keep up with anyone, but I would just get really low marks in my PE lessons. I would get really low grades, like, and I'm kind of a high aimer, so that always really disappointed me. I was like, think towards like GCSE time, my school are known for being really good at the sports kind of department, so they just focused on the sports kids that were actually going to excel and have a career in sports. So they just kind of let everyone else play like ping pong or just something. They didn't really care. So that was great for me because we weren't doing any extreme sports or running or anything where I had to, I always felt left out. So that was quite good. But I know that they just didn't really know how to equip disabled kids, which is
No,
really bad. They shouldn't have just, put you to one corner and given you a ball to occupy yourself with. Like,
it's a bit, honestly, I think you're right, and especially back in those days, it was, people just didn't really know how to handle disabled kids. Like, I was the first disabled child in my primary school and also my high school. I remember in high school, by that point, I was in my wheelchair, and yeah, the disabled toilet, they gave it with an automatic button, and it was on the wall, so you press the button and it would just open. And you'd have people walking past pressing the button. So I'd be terrified to go in the disabled toilet because you could just open it. Like, so I'd always have to take someone with me and be like, just stand by the button, don't let anybody press it.
yeah,
Yeah, but they thought it was great because, oh, it's an automatic door, and I'm like, but it doesn't lock properly.
that's crazy. How
I
on earth
know.
is anyone supposed to use that if it unlocks from the outside?
Honestly, I was like, that just has completely defeated the object of making this easier.
Oh no, that's awful. So did you have to use stairs then to go to the toilet?
I did a couple of times until they did that, or I just took someone with me. But by that point, stairs were really, really difficult. So it would take me pretty much every bit of effort I had to get to the top of them. And by that point, I'd literally be like panting and be drenched in sweat and have palpitations. And I'd be like, I just need the toilet. Like, why is this so difficult?
Wow. Yeah, it's honestly, there's just no care in, well, I mean, there wasn't any care. Hopefully it's changed.
I hope so.
Um, because I've been going into schools recently talking about my disability, and I know teachers are really trying to be more inclusive, and obviously there are still disabled kids, around today. It's not like it was just a thing when we were young. Um,
No.
but it's just so nice for disabled kids now to have someone that's also quite young, but maybe they see them as like really old. I don't know how they saw me, but just someone that was able, someone that they could relate to, and someone that shared the same experiences as them, like as literally that they're going through right now. Like whatever I went through in school, whatever you went through in school, maybe there's another disabled kid going through the exact same thing right now. So yeah, I think it's great what you're doing, and I'm trying to do, similar things, I guess, like just trying to raise awareness and share our experiences just so that at least one person can feel less alone in what they're going through.
I think it's really great what you're doing too, and I think we both are very similar in the way that we want to try and help people. And I think the more of us that do it, the more reach we'll get. And I think definitely by going into schools, as you say, you'll there will be you will come across people that will be able to relate and get that reassurance of, oh, she was here where I am, and she's all right, so I'll be okay.
Yeah, exactly. And when you're that young, you don't understand the disability yourself, really, let alone trying to get your friends or, other people in your class to understand it. Like I remember I was, trying to be a bit more open. I'd found out about my disability at this point, but I was trying to tell my friends about it and they didn't really get it because it wasn't very obvious. And I would struggle with stairs, but I'd be fine to walk. And they weren't really sure like where the line was to help me and knowing what I could and couldn't do, and I didn't really know because it was evolving all the time.
Hmm.
So that's another really difficult thing, not only trying to understand it yourself but trying to get everyone else in your life to try and understand you as well. That could be quite difficult.
What were your like first symptoms? Because as you say, like it is quite an evolving condition, and I'm interested to hear like what yours were compared to what mine were.
Yeah, so I was obviously, like I said, I was quite slow, and um I would burn out quicker than a lot of other people. I would tire quite easily. I remember feeling really stiff if I went to like, those kind of play centres with my
Hmm.
friends. I would feel really, really stiff afterwards. Or I used to play a lot of Just Dance. if anyone's a Nintendo Wii
I
fan.
love that.
And I remember my arms would get so stiff, and I just thought it was normal. Like, I didn't realize it was a part of the condition. And then when I went into high school, I struggled with stairs. I think that was like the main things that made me different from other people, was that everyone else could run up and down stairs. And I used to be able to do that. I miss being able to like leap up 2 steps at a
Yeah.
time. Were yours quite similar?
So mine, there's some similarities in the sense of stairs. So my first symptoms started when I was about 5, and I ever so slightly started to go up on my tiptoes. And when I'd run, you could just kind of see, like, I didn't have, like the spring in your step, like when you leap and stuff. Like, I was very robotic. And then by the time I got to about 8, I was fully on my tiptoes, and my arms had started to bend because they are fixed at a 90-degree angle, my arms. So I can bend them like this, but I can't straighten them. And that happened quite quickly. Like, I'd say my strain did progress pretty quickly. Like, once I'd started with the toe walking, everything kind of followed. Like, the arms, and then I lost my swallow overnight when I was 12.
What?
I had my friends over for a sleepover. I was completely fine the night before. Woke up the next day, tried to eat and drink and couldn't. Like, literally overnight.
Wow, that must be a crazy, crazy shock.
And it was at first I thought, oh, maybe I'm just getting like a viral sore throat thing. But after about a week and it hadn't progressed, and it felt like I had like a big golf ball in my throat. And whenever I'd try and even drink water, like I'd kind of cough, and it was really uncomfortable. And after a few weeks, I had one of those, where you drink the dye and they watch where it goes on the scanner, and you could see that it would just like get stuck, and then it would go down a little bit, then it would get stuck in my chest, go down a bit more. So I had like full dysmotility from like my throat all the way down to my stomach. And for me, I mean, I had a peg at the time, and I think the general consensus from the medical team was, oh, we'll just leave it. Like, there's no point trying to get a swallow back. But for me, I was like, well, food is a really big part of my life. And so I would like to try and regain that ability. And it took me about 5 years. And a lot of it was really slow. But eventually, I relearned how to eat. And that was just like the biggest, I'd say probably that's been the biggest hurdle, surprisingly. Even from my legs and my arms, it was the eating issues that really impacted me mentally. So that was a big thing that I was like, no, I need to get this back. But other than that, it then started to affect my bladder and my heart as well. So it affects pretty much every muscle in my body.
Wow. So do you have to go for regular heart checkups as well?
Yeah, and I have a lot of those, the like 2-week Zio patch monitor things that they put on you, where they monitor you for like 2 weeks and then they download the data. So I do a lot of them, but
Okay.
it's quite, I'd say it is quite well managed. I mean, I go up and down with symptoms and I go through phases where it bothers me more, but I think I've learned to kind of manage it a bit better now, I hope.
Yeah, yeah. Wow, that's so interesting. And yeah, it does sound quite different to mine.
I thought that when I was learning more about your strain, I was really surprised because I've never met anyone with another type of limb girdle. And
Really?
I was really interested to be like, well, how are you affected compared to me? Because I've noticed on your social media, even when you post photos of eating and stuff, I'd be like, oh, it doesn't appear like she's got the same type of
Yeah.
difficulties.
And I think when I was younger, especially, there wasn't as much information about the different types of strains. So there would just be the
No.
general kind of, well, we need to look out for, standing on your tippy toes, because I'd met people. I think one of the times I went to London, we stayed with a family with kids who had LGMD 2D, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And the youngest was already in a wheelchair. Like, I think the other two were walking on their tiptoes, something like that. This was years ago. But I remember, wondering like why I wasn't affected the same way as them. Like, if we had basically the same thing. But actually, LGMD is like such a variety of symptoms, and it really does affect everyone so differently. So I remember my physios would be like, well, you're still able to put your heels on the ground, you're fine. But it's more weakness that I struggle with. So my hips, especially now, I feel that they're so weak, and like I feel like I'm compensating for my hips with other muscles. So one of my inner thigh muscles are really weak, so my knee turns in when I walk because the outer muscle is like compensating for it, and it's not it's like working overtime basically to try and help my leg to keep walking. And then when I walk, I do have a bit of a waddle and a bit of a wide gait. Just
I have the waddle.
Oh, do you? Oh, there we go. Waddling girlies.
I know. Two little penguins.
Honestly. But yeah, I feel like it's the rest of my body trying to make up for it to try and help me walk, but it's just my hips and my core muscles are so weak now. But I do have two younger sisters who also have 2I, and they're affected like even more differently from me. So the age that they're at now, I was worse at that age than they are now, which is great for them, and I'm really glad. So my middle sister doesn't really have as much weakness. Like, she can push herself, but sometimes she doesn't know her limit and she pushes herself too much and she just gets really bad pain, and like she kind of like seizes up and then just can't leave bed for the next day. Like, if she's overdone it one day, she's like flat out.
Oh, bless her.
And it doesn't help that we're all very competitive. So for her, I'm sure it's really easy to just forget about your LGMD and just push yourself and then, suffer the consequences afterwards. And then my younger sister gets a lot more fatigue than the two of us, I'd say. Yeah, so it's all very different. So even though the three of us have got the same strand, we're all affected differently. So I'm always keen to meet other LGMDers, because sometimes I find that some of the people I've met with different strains are actually more similar to me than my sisters are. So yeah, it's crazy.
And to be honest, like that's something I really enjoyed with doing this and meeting other people, is because there's always the odd little line of similarity where I'm like, oh yeah, I get that. But then there'll be something so different that I'll think, gosh, it's like I haven't met anybody else with a type of muscular dystrophy that has the eating and nutrition issues that I have, which I find crazy.
Yeah, that's a new one for me as well. I haven't met anyone else with that either, so that's interesting.
I don't know if, I mean, I was always told that it was related to my muscular dystrophy, but now I'm like, have I maybe just got some, like a digestive issue anyway or something? Because my weight, I mean, I was always slim, but I started struggling to maintain my weight when I was about 13, 14, and was malnourished probably like 5 times, admitted into hospital, had all of that refeeding stuff. And it took a long time to find a way of getting nutrition in me that I could tolerate, because I just really, I don't know what it is, but my body just reacts not great to a lot of nutrition, whatever way it's given. So I was put on the parental nutrition when I was about 17, and it's hard work. Like, I don't tolerate it amazingly well, but it is the only thing that really keeps me alive and well. So it's one of them, you have to just kind of take it as it comes and manage it. But I'd say it's probably just the best of a bad job, really. And I just try and eat what I can, but I just don't really absorb it.
Wow, that's so interesting. And yeah, it's just it's crazy to think that that is still LGMD. Because yeah, like you said, I haven't met anyone with that, but hopefully through this podcast you will get to meet other people.
I hope so. I mean, I'm glad that I meet people that are able to sustain themselves, but everyone that I've met now with muscular dystrophy is just like, oh no, it's not a problem. Like, and I'm just like, Well, what?
One thing I have noticed is when I went to, so there's an annual Limb Girdle Muscular Dystrophy 2I conference in Iowa, and I went to one of them a couple of years ago, and I met so many people with 2I, but they were all completely different. So they would be like maybe a 40-year-old woman in a mobility scooter. They would be like a 30-year-old woman with a ventilator on her, like at all times. They would
Wow.
be, you know, a 50-year-old woman who can still stand, but she has like a cane or a walking stick or something to help her. So the variety in age and like, you know, dependency on mobility aids or whatever really varied. So it made me feel a lot better that actually there is no like set kind of timeline for me or
Mm-hmm.
for anyone else with LGMD, because it really does vary on the person. But rest assured, I met a few people that were on what have I just said, ventilators, and
Mm-hmm.
that or that need to be hooked up to them at night.
Oh,
So I'm sure there'd be plenty of people that, you know, are fed in different ways, because I'm sure if you struggle with your breathing, I'm sure that the your throat and your kind of digestive system is also affected in that way as well.
yeah, you'd think so. If those muscles are affected, you'd think it would kind of affect the others as well. I was going to ask you, and it kind of relates to what you've just said, is something that I have always found a bit tricky with the diagnosis is when people say, you know, the word progressive, and you always, in the back of your mind, are aware of, oh, well, what am I going to be like in the future? Is that something that has played on your mind before, or that still does?
Oh, constantly. It's is always a thing that's going to be at the back of my mind, especially as I'm getting older. It didn't really bother me as much in school because I was like, well, I struggle with stairs, but I can still pretty much do anything else. But in seeing the decline and or the progression already, and already not being able to do a lot of things that I could do, I often think about the things that I can still do now, even if I struggle with it a bit, and think I may not be able to do this in the future. So I can't run anymore. I used to go for runs when I was younger. I used to run on the treadmill in the gym, but now my gym routine looks very different and I
Mm-hmm.
cannot run. If I try to run, my hips would be too weak and I would fall. And that's a symptom that I've had for years, is just my knees buckling and just falling randomly, like just
Oh,
literally
God.
collapsing. So obviously I'm not even going to try running because I don't want that resulting in some broken bones. But I miss that a lot, and it is okay to grieve that, but there's just the constant thing of like, okay, well I can still walk, but what if I can't walk in the future? You know, yeah, I can't run, but that's not going to affect my life massively. But walking really is like a big part of life, you know?
Yeah.
And yeah, I really do think about that a lot, and I think about, you know, if the time comes that I want to start a family, what that will look like. Um, you know, will I be able to give birth? Will I be able to survive pregnancy?
Mm-hmm.
But I have met some LGMD mums that have, you know, given me really good advice, but I know that pregnancy really does progress the condition a lot
Yeah.
more.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just kind of like, do I want to put myself through that? Yeah, it really does play on my mind a lot, and I'm sure it does for you as well. And but it, you know, I try not to think about it too much because it's so easy to have fears for the future. And one thing I try to think about is, yeah, it could affect me later on in life. I could maybe not be able to walk and be stuck in my wheel. I say stuck, you know,
I know what you
that's just a
mean.
negative stereotype. You know, I know that being in a wheelchair isn't going to end my life. I know it's going to, you know, I'm still going to have a joyful life in a wheelchair, but it's just weird to think that your life's going to change that much. But
Mm-hmm.
something I think about is maybe a bit morbid, but you know, I could be that bad in the future, but I could literally be hit by a bus tomorrow. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I should be grateful for what I have now, and anything could happen. You know, it's not just LGMD. If people without LGMD worried about all the different types of possibilities of
Oh,
things
God.
that could happen to them, you know, we would all live such miserable lives, and life is hard enough as it is. So I really try not to worry about that too much. Yes, there are things that I'll have to cross that bridge when I get to it, but it is really important to focus on the now and be grateful for what you can still do, because I think that's the best way to live your life, I think.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, that's exactly how I try and look at life. I think especially the journey that I've been on and with a lot of my heart issues, I'm just so thankful for every day. And you're right, like life is so precious, and I'm sure yourself we've met people on this journey that, you know, are maybe no longer with us, and it's happened very quickly. So you do just appreciate how quickly things can change. So you just want to make the most of every day and live in the moment, especially while you feel good and can do things. That's why I'm very, like, to my partner, I'm always like, oh, come on, we've got to do this, we've got to go here, we've got to do this. And it's because I'm always like, wow, we can. We need to just embrace the moment. And I think, like yourself, I've always put a lot of importance on my walk and being able to walk. And even if my walk quality isn't great, the way that I look at it is like, well, at least you can
Yeah.
walk. You know, I'm
Yeah.
a bit of a waddler. You know, I thrust my hips forward, but it doesn't matter. Like, and I think I do a lot of physio and have a lot of different people involved in maintaining my walk. And the biggest thing that I've always said to them is we've just got to keep that. Like, if even if other things go, like that is what I would like to try and maintain for as long as I can, really.
Yeah, it is really important, but I feel you on that. Like, even if my walk isn't that great, I still try to, be grateful that I can, because I have had some days where I've just been so tired or I felt
Mhm.
so rough that I can't really leave my home, and I just want to, all I can do is just lay on the sofa and just rest. And sometimes I feel so useless on those days, but then when I, feel a bit better and get my strength back and I go for a walk, I'm like, oh, I took this for granted, you know? And over winter last year, I experienced something new in my LGMD progression.
Mhm.
So the cold weather really, really affected me last year, to the point where my legs would kind of seize up and I'd be in so much pain just from walking literally like a minute, that I'd have to just turn and come back. And I felt like I had missed out on some things because of that pain. I couldn't go on, nights out with my friends because of it. I had to just stay at home. I couldn't wear everything that I wanted to. I had to just wrap up in layers,
Yeah.
You do have to be sensible, but um yeah, it really affected me last winter because I just missed out on so many things, and I'm a very sociable person, so that was it was quite a hit for me. But
Mhm.
then luckily, and I'm so, so grateful for this, but obviously when the weather started getting better in the spring and, going into the summer, the weather really did help and the pain did go. And I did feel that if I kept exercising, then the pain would kind of stay away. But if I rested for too long and then decided to go for a walk, my legs would be like, whoa, what's going on? And try to
Yeah.
figure out. Yeah, so I am worried for this winter, to be honest, just really hoping that pain doesn't come back. But if it does, at least, I know how to deal with it now. But when that pain left for the summer, I was so grateful and I was just so happy to be able to go out walking without going into immediate pain. Yes, still can't walk very far, but just the little things, like you just have to be grateful for them.
I agree. I think, do you find in the cold weather, like, it almost stings your muscles a bit?
It's like
Or is it a
shooting
different
pains,
pain?
I get.
Yeah.
I think, well, the muscle I was talking about earlier in my right leg on my thigh that overcompensates for the weak muscle on my inner thigh. I think that was the one that took the hit. It was my right leg that really hurt, the one that kind of turns in when I walk.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, it was like shooting pains up and down my leg, and if I overdid
Oh,
it, the pain would not go. To the point where I was thinking like, right, I need more than just paracetamol to keep me going here.
yeah. Oh no, I'm not a fan of the cold weather. It makes me really stiff, and I struggle with stiffness anyway. But it's so much worse in the cold, and I feel it. I mean, we're gonna sound really old now, but I've started to feel it in my joints, like in my knees and my
Yeah.
hips. and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm 26.
It really
Come on.
is. I know, it really is your joints that takes the hit.
It
But
is.
yeah, I completely feel you. Like, I feel like I'm in a body that's so much older than
Yeah.
my actual age or my mental age. And does it frustrate you when people say like, "Oh, you're young, you should be going out all the time and,
Ugh.
grabbing life and just, taking as much as you can and just doing as much as you can." It's not a reality for a lot of people. So that
It's
can kind of
not.
make me feel really guilty. What about you?
I really hate that perception with society where it's like you have to go out to be living life, and otherwise you're just sitting at home rotting away, as they call it. But I just, I really disagree with that. Like, I mean, who says you have to go out, leave the house every single day to be living your life? Like, I just think that's a load of rubbish. I mean, I can do productive things like looking after my health and having a rest at home, and that doesn't mean that I'm failing at life or that I'm being lazy or not grabbing chances. We all need a bit of a recharge. It's just for a lot of disabled people like ourselves, it's a lot more important. I mean, God, if I didn't have those days where I rested, I honestly think I'd just like run myself into an early grave, to be honest.
Mm. Yeah, definitely. You have to pace yourself. That's another thing that I've had to learn. And like you said earlier, like wanting to make loads of plans and like get a lot of things done while we can.
Mm-hmm.
I fall into a trap of thinking that I can conquer the world, and then when I
Yeah.
can't, I just like beat myself up for it, and I'm like, why can't I do this? Like, I had all these things I wanted to get done today, and I've only done like 3 things, and it's really frustrating me. So yeah, pacing yourself is a really important thing in general, let alone with
Mm-hmm.
LGMD.
I can really relate to that. Like, I have a constant battle in my head of being like, right, you need to do your loads, and then also being like, no, I can't. And it is a constant battle because I'll beat myself up for not doing things, but then I know when I do push myself, I don't enjoy things and I just set myself back further. So it's trying to find that balance, but it's such a fine line, I think.
Yeah, definitely. Funny you say the word balance.
I know. Mine's
Balancing literally
rubbish.
like it's like literally finding the balance in life is like literally my motto for life. And I guess that's where the inspiration for my podcast title came as
I
well.
know. I really liked that title.
Oh, thank you. Do you want to know how I came up with it?
Yeah, go on.
So, I was really stuck for a podcast title, and I love Dystrophy Diaries. Like, it's such a good name.
Thank you.
And it kind of feels, it's like a diary, isn't it? It's like a vocal
It is a
journal.
bit.
I find that my podcast is very much like therapy or a vocal journal. So I wanted something that other people could relate to, but I didn't want it to be like a sob story. And I asked AI, Chat GPT, to
Oh,
help me
yeah.
with some ideas, and they were all like, just something really like really cringy things
Yeah.
like empowerment in disability, and I'm like,
Oh, God. No.
at times this won't be empowering at all, like, but there was one that said like balancing something and something, and I was like, ooh, balance, I like that. And then I thought about myself, and because I fall a lot,
Mm,
I'm unbalanced. Like, I literally, if you tip me either way, or like if a gust of wind hits me really
yeah.
hard, I could topple over. So not only am I physically imbalanced, I'm also mentally imbalanced, like this does affect our mental health. But I didn't want the podcast to just be about people with muscular dystrophy like myself. Like, I wanted to interview a range of people with mental health conditions or skin conditions or any kind of life barrier that
Mm,
they still are able to overcome, and how they live their life with that barrier. So I feel like Unbalanced can cater for anything really. Like,
yeah.
life in general is unbalanced, and everyone says all the time, like, oh, I'm just trying to find a good balance in life, work-life balance, balance in my family and my boyfriend, or my friends, there's balance in everything. So I feel like Unbalanced was definitely like the way to go for me, and I haven't looked back, to be honest. I'm quite proud of it.
I think it's a really cool name, honestly, and I think you're right. It applies to so many different things because I think it's balance in everything.
Obviously you've got a fiance.
Yeah.
What's that like, having someone just, with you and that understands you and, accepts you for you?
Do you know what? When I was younger and was going through quite a difficult time in my health, I pretty much accepted in my mind that I couldn't have a partner, not because I didn't think anyone would like me, but I was just so not alright in myself that I was like, I can't think about another person's feelings. I can't go on dates. I haven't got that capacity. And then when I met Carl, my fiance, I had just gone to uni and I was in quite a stable place and I'd had a lot of therapy and worked for a lot of my anxieties and stuff. So it was really a good time to kind of get out there. And just from day one, he was so different in the sense of he was just so accepting and caring. And I think when you first meet someone, it's always that question of, well, how do you have that conversation? Because you don't want to be really formal and sit down and make a big thing out of it. But you're also like, well, I kind of need to let them know who I am, and because if they're not alright with it, I'd rather know now. But I sort of said to Carl from the beginning, I was like, don't Google it. First of all, do not Google. Like, get to know me as a
Yeah, that's
person.
such a good idea.
Honestly, I was like, yeah, don't listen to that. You need to get to know me as a person. So we just spent time together, and I was just honest. Like, if there was somewhere we'd go and I struggled with the steps, I'd be like, oh, I can't do that. And so we kind of just got to know each other on a really deep basis from the get go. And it's really lovely. And I think now, because we live together and we're getting married, he's taken over a lot of the responsibilities, if you will. I don't really like that word, but like the stuff that my mum would do, i.e., going to appointments. Whereas
Yeah.
my mum would always take me. Me and Carl go together now, and I think having that support in that way from the person that you love is it's opened up a whole new world, and I think it's really helped me almost accept myself more, if that makes sense. Like I do feel like he empowers me, to be honest.
No, I completely relate to you on that one. My boyfriend sounds quite similar to yours, just in the way that, I was honest with him from the beginning. I didn't tell him not to Google it, but I don't think he did, which is great because,
Yeah.
like I said, it really affects everyone so differently. And when you Google it, it's always the extreme, most depressing symptoms that come up.
Oh,
So
it is.
I'm glad he didn't, because that probably would have put him off.
Yeah.
But yeah, so yeah, he's quite similar. We live together now, and he knows me so well that, if we're walking together and there's a bit of a hill, he knows to like hold on to me a different way to help me
Yeah.
up. And if there's stairs, he, gives me a hand or picks me up or whatever.
Yeah.
It's just so nice to have someone. And like you said, I feel so much more valid, which is such a silly thing to, because, you should accept yourself anyway, blah, blah, blah. But having someone that just sees past the symptoms and just appreciates you for who you are really does make you feel, special and more accepted and valid, and, not just by him, but by my friends and family as well. Yeah, it's just, it really does, sometimes the LGMD and the thoughts surrounding it can really overwhelm you, and
Mm.
fears for the future, like we talked about, and um you know if you're having a bad day, it can really consume your life at that point. But he really just like brings me back down to earth and is like, it's fine, you just need to rest. It's just your body telling you to rest. Or I know there'll be hard things in the future, but I'll be there to help you, and you'll still be able to live a full life, no
Mm.
matter what that looks like. And just having those thoughts just kind of calm down when I'm just going a bit dramatic, or overthinking things. So it's good to have that balance.
It is that balance. See that key word again. But I think that was also something I was really keen to highlight in this podcast, and because I for a long time just didn't think it would be possible to have that type of companion. So now to be able to have that, it's something you want people to kind of be aware of, that it is possible.
Yeah, that's so nice to hear, and I'm so happy for us.
I really enjoyed us being able to have this chat. I really have. So thank you for coming on. I'm glad we could finally do it.
Yeah, I know. Oh, we're both just busy or, just things get in the way, but I'm really glad that we've been able to schedule this in. I'm glad that
Life's
we've
really
done it.
chaotic with LGMD. Very chaotic.
It is. Nothing is ever smooth sailing with LGMD, we can say that for sure.
So,
but yeah, it was so nice. Thank you so much for having me on, and I'd definitely be open for doing a part 2.
absolutely, I'd love that. And look, because as I say, we've got so many topics we could cover.
Yeah,
It's
definitely.
nice just to speak to someone that you feel like has had such a similar experience in everything.
Yeah, even though our symptoms are so different, our kind of experiences in life have been quite similar. So that's just been so nice to relate to someone, another young gal with LGMD as well.
Yeah.
So it's just so nice. But we'll stay in touch anyway. We've got each other's Instagrams and things.
And it's nice just to have that friendship and support each other's podcasts, because we're both kind of doing the same thing. It's nice to be each other's cheerleader.
Definitely, yeah. I was going to mention there's a conference happening in Orlando, Florida, next July, and it's for all types of LGMD, so not just a specific subtype. It's for literally anyone with LGMD. And I went to, like I said, the conference in Iowa for 2I specifically with my family. And my boyfriend can join then, but he's really keen on coming to Florida, so we've booked it this time. I'm going to be running a couple of the sessions there as well, like the youth breakout sessions. So if you're interested in meeting more people with LGMD, I know it's a bit of a journey to go to Florida, but you can get compensation and stuff like that. You do get a lot of money back to help you with flights and things. But if you and Carl or maybe your family would be interested, then I can send you the details about it. Yeah, it sounds really exciting because I know there's so many LGMD people going to be there.
Yeah. Oh, that would be lovely, definitely. And I know that there's a lot more awareness and progression and research and stuff out in America. So it'd be nice to kind of meet people there and see what I learn. I feel like I'd learn a lot from those conferences. Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah,
and it'd be nice to hang out in person as well.
I know, exactly, but hopefully we'll get to do some UK things as well.
I hope so.
I think
Fingers crossed.
Some things need to be organised for UK people, I think.
I agree.
There's enough of us now.
I know, there's a proper little group of us now.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, so hopefully it'll continue to grow.